See how we do. I'm trying to share a screen.
All right. Are you not able to share?
I'm trying to get back to it. There I have it. Got the Safari. Huh. I am trying to settings, at least. Why doesn't it have it here? Oh, here it is. You see it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Okay. It looks like Elena is on.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the post up on Facebook. And I'm going to do that right. Well, it's 11:56. I'll do that one more.
A few more minutes. Elena, do you want to show your face? Put on your camera. There you are.
Good morning. I was just eating some lunch, so I might turn it off again so you don't have to see me chomping away. But you know, there's another feature in Zoom that you might be interested in where if you're trying to set things up for your meetings, you can put, I think this is available on all the Zooms, unless it's a special subscription, but you can keep people in like a waiting room. And then once you feel like you're ready, you can invite everybody in. I participated in some that have done that as well. So just another thought.
Yeah, we do have a waiting room, but I guess I can't wait to let people in because I let them in like right away. And some of them I have to establish who they are because their names may be like Bubby's iPhone or something like that, or like, or just Samsung 8750. And I just want to, get in there and say, hey, see who they are and stuff like that. So I don't,
Sure.
Here's Julie. I'm letting in Julie. All right, it is. What time is it now?
Hold on a second. I just ended up, let's see. Still trying to share. I think I had a share.
I see it up there.
Okay, and I don't see it. Not sure why. You see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. $11:59.
Okay. Now I think I see it. Do you see my cursor on it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, you guys ready to begin?
Yeah, posted it on Facebook. I will go mute.
Okay, and Julie.
All your
Okay, everybody. So we are continuing our study of Pirkei Avot. It is tradition to study Pirkei Avot between Pesach and Shavuot. There's quite a lot here, and we're not going to get through all of Pirkei Avot in the weeks before Shavuot, but I thought we would take a Mishnah or two, a verse or two of Pirkei Avot to just kind of get into it a little bit, to see what the rabbis had in mind for these ethical prescriptions. We should live in a certain way. We should be leaders of the Jewish community in a certain way. And these are the values that they felt were most important to take a look at. So last week, we studied the first Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, which talked about transition of the law, really in a sense, transitions of God's will, word for word, as we have it in the Torah, through the generations, from Sinai to Joshua, to the elders, to the prophets, to the men of the great assembly. And that's where these men of the great assembly started with their first ethical consideration. And they said, and we won't go into it in detail, we did last week, be patient in the administration of justice, as you see here, right here. And that really is a suggestion, really, and a requirement of the judges of the people of Israel, that they should be patient and go through all of the details and all of the testimony in a very clear and careful way before they give judgment. Anything that would be impulsive or something that wasn't thoughtful is prohibited, and that's how the judges should do their work. Raising many disciples, we'll see a little bit of that in the next Mishnah, and making a fence around the Torah, we should be sure, particularly having to do with prohibitions, that we don't even get close to a Torahitic prohibition by prohibiting other labors that aren't specifically prohibited, but could get us closer to an actual prohibition. So we create that fence around the Torah. All right, so let's go into our second Mishnah. You see it there, Shimon HaTzadik, right here. Shimon HaTzadik, Haya Mishyarei Knesset Hagdolah, right? One of the participants in the Great Assembly, the 120 person court of law, essentially the high court. And this is what he used to say. Just to know that Shimon HaTzadik was from the 2nd century BCE, and he was a bridge between the prophets, and you see the prophets up there as being part of the transition. So you see Zakenim Unevi'im. So Shimon HaTzadik was right at the end of the Nevi'im here, making the transition to the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, right? Basically in the 2nd century BCE. That's who he is, a very important positional model of the transmission of Torah. So Shimon HaTzadik, Haya, Mishyarei Knesset Hagdolah, men of the Great Assembly. And he specifically used to say, Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. And on 3 things, the world stands. On Torah, Al HaTorah, Ve'al HaAvodah, Ve'al Gimilut Chasadim. Torah, temple service, we'll talk about in a minute, and practice of acts of piety. I'm not sure that's the greatest translation, but we'll go back to it in any sense. We've got about 5 people on Zoom here. Just kind of a raising of your hands. Have you heard about this before? The 3 pillars upon what the world stands. Is that familiar to you? I mean, it's a song, and okay, so most of you, it is familiar to you. So Shimon HaTzadik, one of the men of the Great Assembly, he used to say, the world stands upon three things: the Torah, the temple service, and the practice of acts of piety. So let's go to Torah first. This means the study of Torah. It doesn't mean specifically the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. It's the study of the 5 books of Moses and all of the literature of the rabbis, right? Going back all through history. When we say let's study some Torah, we're not just talking about the Chumash, what we read in the synagogue on Saturday morning. We're talking about the Talmud, the Mishnah, like this Mishnah, the Talmud, all of the codes and the shelut v'tshuvot, conversation between people in one community and people in the other community. Now, this is Mishnaic. So Shimon HaTzadik is saying that we should study all the laws of the Mishnah and the laws of the Bible itself, the Chumash itself, the 5 books of Moses. But as we go through history, when we talk about studying Torah, we talk about everything: Chumash, Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud, all of Jewish learning up until the present day. So obviously you can only imagine that for 3,000 years of the creation of tradition, there's a lot to study. If you go just to the Talmud itself, Tammy is going through what they call Daf Yomi, and that is a whole folio page, 2 sides of a page in the Talmud. And she's doing, which is an enormous amount of material to do in one day. So she listens to a podcast of Daf Yomi, and that's of the whole Talmud. And it will take about 7.5 years of doing it every single day to get through the Talmud, right? An enormous amount of text over the course of a day, enormous amount of text. And you do that for 7 whole years before you get through the Talmud. So as you can see, there's more than enough literature, sacred text for you to read that would take a whole lifetime to learn. So there's always Torah. And according to Shimon HaTzadik, Torah should be something that is a part of every single day. There has to be something that you learn in terms of Jewish tradition every single day. So you're all on a Zoom meeting talking about Pirkei Avot. You are studying this Torah every Tuesday and Thursday, moving forward with me. And if there's something, a Jewish book, a Jewish text of some sort, anything that would connect you to your tradition, if you study that, you will have taken care of your responsibility for the study of Torah. Okay. Al ha'avodah, right? Al ha'avodah. That is the temple service. So that is what tradition understood to be avodah. And that is, you come to Jerusalem and you give, like, for example, this past for Pesach, you would give a paschal lamb over to the priest in the temple. The priest would sacrifice that lamb and give the meat back to you. And you would eat that during Passover, sharing it with family and friends and so on. That's avodah. There is a very intricate system of sacrifices that you will read in the book of Leviticus, which is almost all written by priests about the priestly service in the temple, which had to do with sacrifice. There were some sacrifices that were of bread and some of spices and so on, but mostly the sacrifices were of animals. And that's what you would do during the course of the year, and the priest would do. That's all avodah. Now you might say to yourself, that's a problem because there's no more temple. We can't make sacrifices anymore. What does avodah mean when there's no possibility of sacrifice? And last week on your Pesach Seder, the Haggadah said to you, don't lift the zeroah off of the Seder plate. Don't lift it up like you lift up charoset, or you lift up the matzah, because there's no temple now, unless someone would think that you are sacrificing in the temple by lifting up this bone. You leave the bone alone, make it very clear there is no avodah in the classical sense anymore since the destruction of the temple. So what is avodah? The rabbis, after the destruction of the temple, had to learn something new. They had to create some new kind of ritual that would be in place of avodah. And they created the concept of avodat halev. That is the service, not the temple service, but the service of the heart, avodat halev. So what happens to avodah? It becomes prayer. So there's an obligation to study Torah every day. There's an obligation of avodat halev to study, to pray every day in some way. Maybe the Shema, if you can do maybe the Amidah, and the rest of the Psalms and everything that surrounds prayer, coming to Minyan or signing on to Minyan these days, all part of prayer that is required of us on a daily basis. Some of you will daven with us on a daily basis. Some will come for Shabbat services. One might come for Yizkor services during the course of the year, or one may come just on the high holidays. But there is avodah in your life. There is prayer in your life, even though prayer is so difficult. But those who do it regularly, they find a certain meaning in it. They read the concepts in the English. They see that it's in praise of God or awe of God, which we'll talk about later on as we go down the Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot. But avodah is bringing some kind of prayer into your life. When we had little kids, we would have them say the Shema before they went to bed every night. And in this way, prayer was brought into their experience and made it easier for them as they got older to bring prayer into their lives as well. So that's avodah. Now we go to Gimilut Chasadim, or chesed. Now, you probably all have heard the concept, or at least the word of chesed. It means loving kindness. It's translated here as the practice of acts of piety. I don't think that's a good translation. It means kindness. It means giving over to other people acts of kindness. And chesed is a broad concept. I will talk about that in just a second. But included in that concept is tzedakah. So if we're talking about chesed, one of the categories of chesed is tzedakah. And you all are very familiar with the concept of tzedakah. In Judaism, tzedakah, or charity, I guess you could say, is an obligation. It's not a suggestion. It's not a nice thing to do. It's obligatory. So you have to give of yourself, and tzedakah, for the most part, is money. You want to give tzedakah to the shul, tzedakah to Jewish organizations in the community, tzedakah for a food pantry, any number of opportunities to give charity or tzedakah. That's why we don't call it charity, we call it tzedakah. There are many opportunities for that, and that's part of what we should be doing in terms of chesed. So chesed is has a larger context. It's a broader category. And what does it mean? Chesed is acts of compassion, acts of loving kindness, doing what is right, even when it's not obligatory. So tzedakah is obligatory, but there are other acts of chesed that are not necessarily required by Jewish law. I don't know, to help immigrants, to help people get healthcare insurance, a variety of things that it doesn't say in Torah that you should help, I don't know, immigration or healthcare, any of those things. But they are all acts of chesed because they're all acts of kindness for those who need help. Now, there's a concept in Judaism that's important to know. It's called lifnim mishurat hadin, which means we are obligated in a certain sense to go beyond the letter of the law. So even when Judaism doesn't require us to do a particular act of chesed, we go beyond what is obligatory in Torah and do special over and above acts of chesed. It's a very important principle, and it's one that, to be a mensch, you have to step forward and do even more than what's required. You have to make a difference in this world for the better. And that's what chesed incorporates. Lifnim mishurat hadin, going above and beyond what is required of us to make a positive difference in the world. And you know that to make even a small difference in someone's life can make a huge difference in the world. And we have this pandemic going, we're all kind of stuck in our own homes, but there are some people that are stuck in their own homes alone. They don't have people around. They don't have interaction with others that can, help them stabilize mood, help them manage the requirements of living day to day. And those people need to be reached out to now, right? This is the time. Many of us are in our homes, we have extra time. Just the extra time that you have from commuting back and forth from work. That gives you time on your hands that you might be able to reach out to somebody every day. The Jewish law doesn't say you have to pick up the phone and call somebody in a worldwide pandemic. You're going beyond what's required of us in the law, or picking up the phone and making someone's day a little bit better. If your phone call, your connection with somebody helps them manage through a day or through a week during this difficult, complicated and time, it could reduce somebody's suffering. It could make that kind of difference in that person's life. And then that person, makes their phone call, and it goes on, paying it forward, making a difference in our community. That's one of the obligations of our synagogue and what we're trying to do on a day-to-day basis with what we do as a part of connecting community and people to one another in community. This is an very important lesson Shimon HaTzadik is talking about. Torah study, prayer, and doing acts of kindness over and above what we might think is even necessary, just doing more. And that's a challenge to us as well. How do we bring those three things into our lives? And particularly how we can do acts of chesed at a time like this, when we have to step forward and make a difference. Okay, that is the second Mishnah of this first chapter. I just want to open things up a little bit. I'm going to unmute you all. Let's see. Or James can do that for us. Okay, now I can't see the button. All right, well, if anybody would like to reflect on this second Mishnah, maybe you could just unmute yourself and see what anyone has in mind before we go on to the next Mishnah. Any thoughts? Yes, Harold, you have to unmute yourself.
There we go. Can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you hear me now? I missed last week, but I watched the video. And the question I have is regarding the fence around the Torah, and it also applies to what is in this week's Mishnah. The fence actually, in my mind, was created by interpretation of the rabbis from what the Torah given to Moses might have said. And whether you believe that Moses had a revelation or God talked to Moses or whatever, a lot of evidence and even in true believers think that the Torah was actually written in sections over the course of many years. And the question I have is, you know, when they say put a fence around the Torah, whose fence is it? Is it the rabbis? Is it the different denominations of Judaism that sort of created their own fences over the course of years? Is it, you know, an Orthodox fence, a conservative fence, a Reform fence? Is it a other denomination of Judaism that creates the fence? Because the halacha may be different in all of those fences. You know, acts of loving kindness may even be different in those different fences. Do you have a comment about that, or can you sort of clarify that?
Yeah, the fence around the Torah was created by the rabbis of the Talmud, Mishnah and the Talmud. So they would see a law like you can't break a plant and make it into like a stick. That is a prohibition from the Torah. So what is a fence around the Torah? You can't ride a horse. It doesn't say anything about riding a horse in Torah. It doesn't say anything forbidden about jumping on a horse and, you know, walking a horse. But it does say you can't break a plant for a stick. So what is the fence around the Torah? Don't ride a horse lest you grab a plant, creating a stick to, you know, tap the horse, get it to go faster. That's an example of a fence around the Torah. There's no problem with the action itself, but lest it lead to a prohibition, they require you not to be able to ride a horse. Okay, that's a fence around the Torah. That was made by the rabbis of the Talmud. You can probably understand their rationale about how does that translate down the generations, particularly in the 20th century, where there was the creation of different movements, late 1800s and early 1900s, when Reform Judaism and later on Conservative Judaism, breaking away from Reform, and Orthodox Judaism, modern Orthodox, all changes that happened in the 19th and 20th centuries. How does that translate? Well, probably if you're growing up in a Reform congregation that doesn't require the observance of traditional Jewish law, then a fence around the Torah is meaningless for you. If you want to ride a horse, ride a horse. Right? If you want to light a fire, light a fire. The Jewish law was not obligatory on them. That's how they understood it. In the conservative world, law is obligatory for conservative Jews. So a fence around the Torah would be relevant. The only problem there is that most conservative Jews don't observe Jewish law, just like their Reform brothers and sisters. But at least I guess you could say the rabbis. Conservative rabbis observe Jewish law, and therefore the fence around the Torah would be relevant. In Orthodox community that sees itself as obligated for all Jewish law, obviously a fence around the Torah would be something they'd be concerned about as well. So I don't know if that helps, Harold, in your question. Fence around the Torah is not a modern concept. It is an ancient concept, and it got translated over the years into the various streams of Judaism.
Just to follow up, you know, in the Talmud and the Gemara, the rabbis didn't always agree, and the Gemara didn't always clarify the answers. So it leaves open the fence, in my mind, at least in some ways. In many, you know, sometimes they agreed, but a lot of times they didn't. What do you do when you have a conflict between the rabbis that isn't resolved?
There are a lot of arguments in the Talmud that don't seem to be resolved and point to a specific Jewish law, but there were codifiers in Jewish tradition, right, starting with the Rif, going through Tosafot, the various Gaonim that talked about Jewish law. In the Middle Ages, you have the Tur, you have Maimonides, all people that looked at the Talmud and said, this is the law. Even for cases that didn't seem to be resolved by the rabbis. But these, we call them the codifiers, said this is the Talmudic passage and this is the law. So again, fence around the Torah was relevant to the codifiers as well. Shulchan Aruch, right? The major code of Jewish law that observant Jews follow today. And they express their own legal rulings on fences around the Torah. So, so from the Gemara all the way till modern times, this concept is relevant and used. Okay, so we just have a few minutes. Let's go through this other Mishnah so that on Thursday we can get into it in detail. Antigonus, who was a student of Shimon HaTzadik, a judge of Socho, received the tradition from Shimon HaTzadik, and hu haya omer, he said, al tihiyu ke'avadimamishamshim et harav al manat lekabel pras, ela havu ke'avadim mishamshim et hara shelo al manat lekabel pras. V'hi mora shamayim aleichem. Right. So Antigonus of Socho received the tradition from his master, Simon the Righteous, Shimon HaTzadik, and he used to say, do not be like servants who serve the master in expectation of receiving a reward, but be like servants who serve the master without the expectation of receiving a reward, and let the fear of heaven be upon you. All right, we'll talk about the fear of heaven in a second, but contemplate this for Thursday, what it means to serve the master. And you know, in Jewish context, the master, Harav, is probably God. So do not be like servants who serve the master in terms of receiving an award. And by the way, we'll talk about this next week. There are rewards from that are mentioned in the Torah upon doing a mitzvah, so to speak. There is reward, but that's not the ideal. The ideal would be to serve God for the sake of your relationship with God, like love, for example, love of God. And you see it in your life. I mean, we have kids. We don't give them things that we expect them to give back to us. Like we're getting something for it. We love our kids and we do things for our kids just for the sake of love and not for the sake of reward. A similar concept is here. Don't be like a servant who expects a reward. Be like a servant who loves his or her master, loves God. And for that reason, we do what we do. So it's a little bit repetitive here. Do not be like servants who serve. Be like servants who serve the master without the expectation of receiving a reward. And it's a kind of a different way of our relationship, of understanding our relationship with God, right? There's a concept, you do mitzvahs, you have, I don't know, a place in heaven. I mean, that concept does exist in Judaism, but here Antigonus Ish Socho says that's not the ideal. That's not the higher understanding of serving God. The service should be from love and not for reward. And that's the ideal that we should work for in our lives. Doing something kind, not because we're going to get something back from, I don't know, the poor person that we're giving food to through the food bank. We're not doing it for a reward. We're doing it because other people, and we feel it's an important thing to do everything that we can to feed the poor. So if you go out to JFS, you're going to see a very large operation there on giving out food to the needy. No one should be hungry. We read about that in the Haggadah. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Right? No one should be hungry, so we work hard, either delivering food to the elderly that might not be able to come, or giving a box of food to a person who needs food that comes to the food bank and gets some cans of food and bread and so on, what they serve to them over there. Not because that person is going to come back, I don't know, make a big donation to JFS. No, that's not it at all. We do it because it's the right thing to do. Again, lifnim mishurat hadin, going above and beyond in acts of chesed, not to get a reward, but from love. Going above and beyond, because that's what human beings do in the world. And that's how we partner with God in making the world better every day that we can. Okay, so it's 12:30. Let's just take a couple of comments. We'll come back to this third Mishnah next week. I'm sorry, on Thursday, and we'll push forward with this Mishnah and the next one as well. Any comments? David?
I have one. It seems like what this is leading to or encompassing is the midot of humility. And I'm wondering if I'm reading that right or if you have a thought on that.
Okay, what are you seeing as an ideal of humility here? What part of the Mishnah are you referring to?
About doing a mitzvah without any expectation of getting something in return.
So the arrogant person would want something in return. Feel entitled, I guess. Maybe that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something, but I'm entitled to a reward. I'm so great. Everything I do should be recognized and praised, and because I'm just such a wonderful human being. So I guess there is a requirement of humility there, and being able to do something without, I don't know, all the fanfare and the compliments and needing something through the process. Here, your own needs are suppressed, I guess, in a sense, and the other person's needs is the one that takes precedence here. So yeah, I think humility is a part of this. All right, Jay, and we have Elena. Anything that you guys might want to add or question? Okay.
Rabbi, this is James. I just want to say that I'm creating YouTube archives of these classes. There's already the first one, and it's on the page that I put into the chat in the Zoom, which is also the page that you got the Zoom information from in the first place. And after this class, the archive of this class will be up there along with class number 1.
And you can connect to it on Facebook, right?
Well, it's also live on Facebook now. Hello, Facebook.
Okay.
But it's through YouTube, and the archives will be YouTube links on that page that I reference in the chat.
Okay, that's great. All right, everybody, let's meet again on Thursday. We'll push forward with a couple more Mishnayot, and they just keep getting more interesting, challenging, in fact, but more interesting as we move forward, and we're going to move forward. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Rabbi.